don't look through the peephole after midnight. I moved into this apartment complex 6 months ago. It's one of those brutalist concrete towers, built in the late 60s, full of asbestos and character. My unit is on the 9th floor, end of the hall. It's quiet, cheap, and the view's decent if you lean far enough over the balcony. There's only one thing I don't like. The hallway. It's always been too long, too narrow, lit by flickering fluorescents that hum just loud enough to make you feel like you're being watched. The other tenants on my floor are older, mostly retirees. I rarely see anyone coming or going. The whole place feels forgotten, like it's a step behind time. Still, it's home. Or it was, until Halloween night. I hadn't planned on handing out candy. It's an apartment building. I didn't think kids went door to door here. Most years I just turned off the lights and watched horror movies with wine and a blanket. It's become a tradition. That night was no different. I was curled up on the couch watching The Thing when I heard the knock. It was soft, deliberate, just once. 6:34 p.m. I paused the movie and stared at the door. Another knock. Same volume. Same rhythm. I got up and checked the peephole. A little girl stood outside. 6, maybe 7. Dressed like a ballerina. Pink tutu, sparkles, white tights. Her costume looked old. Not vintage, just worn out. The tulle was stained like it had been dragged through a parking lot. She didn't have a candy bag. Didn't say trick or treat. Just stood there with her arms at her sides, looking straight ahead. Not directly at the peephole, but close enough that it was unnerving. I didn't open the door. "Sorry, sweetie, I don't have any candy," I said gently. She didn't move. I waited. Watched. A full minute passed before she turned and walked slowly down the hallway toward the elevator, which oddly never dinged when it opened. 6:50 p.m. Another knock. I checked the peephole again. A boy this time, maybe 10 years old, wearing a cheap astronaut costume. The cardboard chest piece had flaked silver duct tape hanging off the edges, and his helmet, a scratched-up bike helmet with a plastic visor, was fogged from the inside. Just like the girl, he didn't say anything. No candy bag. Just stood there. I watched for over a minute. Nothing changed. Then he turned and left. Same slow, dragging walk toward the elevator. Again, no ding. I started feeling watched. I checked the hallway cam through the tenant app on my phone. It showed a live feed of the 9th floor hallway, but the screen was blank. Not off, just black, like the hallway wasn't there anymore. By 7:15 p.m., I'd had 3 more visitors. All children, all silent, all dressed in decaying versions of classic costumes. A firefighter with a melted helmet, a nurse with a rust-colored stain down the front, a cowboy missing one boot. Each time I looked through the peephole, each time I felt colder. It wasn't just weirdness, it was the way they stood, perfectly still, no fidgeting, no shifting their weight. Kids can't stay still that long. These ones weren't right. I messaged my friend Tasha on the 3rd floor. "Are there kids trick-or-treating in the building tonight?" "Not that I've seen. Why?" I told her about the kids. She sent back a skull emoji and said, "Creepy AF." Then nothing. At 8:03 p.m., the ballerina came back. Same girl, same spot. Only this time, she was facing the peephole. Her eyes didn't blink. Her head twitched slightly every few seconds, like someone had dropped a needle on a broken record. Her mouth was open just a little too wide. And her teeth, God, her teeth were small, gray, and far too many. I backed away from the door. Not 10 seconds later, another knock. Softer this time. Almost curious. I didn't move. The knock came again, then a 3rd time. Gentle, rhythmic, as if she were knocking to a beat only she could hear. I stayed in the kitchen until 9 p.m. That's when the adult knocked. 3 firm knocks, sharp, final. I checked the peephole. No one. But the hallway had changed. Gone was the dim fluorescent light. Instead, there was a flickering orange glow, like from a dying fire. The carpet was gone, replaced by bare concrete, cracked and wet. The walls were streaked with mold and something darker. Then I saw them. All the children I'd seen before. The ballerina, the astronaut, the nurse, the cowboy, lined up along the hallway, shoulder to shoulder. And behind them stood something else. A figure, tall, inhumanely thin, wearing a mask made of shattered glass. The mask reflected back on my own face, but distorted, broken, rearranged like a puzzle with pieces missing. Its limbs were too long. Its hands too sharp. And in the warped reflection, I could see something crawling beneath my skin. I blinked, and in that moment, it was right at my door. I screamed and stumbled back, engaging every lock I had. Deadbolt, chain, floor bar. Then I turned off all the lights and sat on the kitchen floor, clutching a knife like it meant something. No more knocks came. 12:03 a.m. The power went out. My phone lit up with one last notification from the tenant app. New hallway footage available. 9th floor, 11:59 p.m. Watch. I clicked it. The camera flickered on. The hallway was normal. At first. Then the lights dimmed, and one by one the children appeared on screen. Silent, motionless, lined up across the hallway, staring at my door. Then the glass-masked figure emerged behind them. Its limbs twitched as it walked. It moved like a broken spider, limbs jerking half a second too late. Like something was controlling it from a distance. Then the ballerina stepped forward, placed one hand on my door. She leaned in close, face nearly touching the camera, and whispered something. No audio, no subtitles. But I swear I heard it in my head. You looked. We answered. Then the feed cut to black. I left that night. I didn't pack. I didn't wait for sunrise. I ran down 9 flights of stairs and drove until my hands stopped shaking. I'm in a motel 3 cities over now. But last night, around midnight, I heard a knock. Soft, deliberate. I'm on the ground floor. There's no hallway outside my room. Just a window. I looked through the peephole anyway. The carpet was gone. And that was Don't Look Through the Peephole After Midnight by D.D. Starburns. It's a really cool freaking name. It makes me wonder if, Dee out of Dexter's Laboratory goes into, like the music world. I suppose she likes dancing a lot in the show, so maybe she ends up becoming like a professional dancer or something like that. Not in a, don't take it the wrong way. I'm talking actual professional stuff. And, D.D. Starburns, that'd be a good name. That'd be a good name for that. Sorry for the random tangent. So, this story's cool. The story's really cool for quite a number of reasons. So, Don't Look at the Peephole After Midnight. It gives you this idea, right? It gives you this idea that if you look through the peephole, something bad will happen. But we don't know for sure what, because, so during the story, before midnight, you can look through the peephole and they've been seeing what I'm assuming are ghostly children, right? It seems quite obvious at this point. But nothing really bad happened except for the fact that they saw the children. But to my understanding, they saw them through the peephole, and later on they saw them through the video feed, which means that they were indeed there, if they could be picked up in more than one way. But the fact that there were multiple children makes me wonder if something really bad happened in this apartment complex. Or maybe before it was an apartment complex, maybe there was an orphanage in the area or something like that. Like some tragic thing happened where children died, most likely on a Halloween night, right? Or maybe there was some kind of a costume party, whatever. And so that's obviously tragic in and of itself. But the fact that they're still around and they're still kind of trick-or-treating is interesting, right? But then we get this other tall figure with the broken glass kind of a mask. I'm guessing that would have been their chaperone, but it almost feels like it's not quite that. It feels like there's something a little bit more sinister going on with this tall adult figure, right? I don't want to immediately assume demon or something along those lines, but it's thought in my head. It was a thought in my head. So it feels like they're in some kind of a sad, horrific purgatory cycle. But the thing is, our protagonist wasn't taken or killed or anything. They were able to escape. And, I mean, granted, yes, it sounds like they followed him. But we don't really know what's going to happen if they ever get to him, right? At least we can assume, we can guess, but we don't know for sure. So it's got a lot of really cool creepy elements, like ghostly children. I mean, ghostly children are creepy as it is anyway. You've got a mystery afoot, like what's actually going on? What are they going to do if they catch somebody? Question mark. Are they only after him or her? I'm afraid I don't know the actual gender of the protagonist. But either way, the fact is, you know, why this person? You're in an entire apartment complex. Why only this one person are you messing with? It's hard to say, isn't it? It's really hard to say. But it's good. It's a good little story. Plenty of good little creep factor. Nothing too horrifying or mind-blowing or scary or anything like that. But it's well written. It's well paced. And, you know, I personally, I would answer a door if somebody knocked on my door. But, you know, I can understand why somebody might not, especially if they don't have candy. You don't want to disappoint kids and stuff like that. So they had the smarter idea here. If I was there and I'd opened the door, I feel like I would have been dead, right? Like, horrible. So, at least they were smarter when it came to that in this horror scenario. I would not have done so well. Things that this made me think about. So, definitely movies right away. The ones that kind of came to mind will be The Sixth Sense, even though it does involve seeing dead people. That's kind of the only true connection when it comes to that, but it's a connection nonetheless. The Shining, yet again, it's this capability of being able to see dead people, and it's a little bit more of a hotel environment, so it's a little closer to an apartment complex. Not exactly the same, but at least it's more people in a building and stuff like that, so kind of a little bit of a closer connection. The other one is it's The Orphanage, actually, simply because it's this family that move into like this building, and their child has some kind of like an issue or something like that. Maybe he's like ill, if I remember right. It's been a while since I've seen this. It's been like nearly 20 freaking years. Came out like 2006, 2007, 2008, somewhere around there, somewhere around those years. And I remember that there's like this other kid that wears this like weird kind of an outfit, costumey, kind of a raggy thing, like a mask on their head and everything. So there was a weird connection with that. The other thing that it also made me think of, which probably is the closest one, would probably be Psycho from the 1960s. I've done it in a future one, but I'm not sure. But basically, because Psycho always takes place usually in the Bates Motel, right? And there's an actual scene involving a peephole in a motel door. So it's probably the closest connection we're going to get, which is really cool. At least when it comes to a peephole being the catalyst. Although the peephole isn't like the most important part of the movie, but it is a cool, like, it's a cool tool to use in a situation. Although, do you want to know perhaps one of my favorite uses of a peephole in a movie though? And it's not a horror movie. It's The Cable Guy with Jim Carrey. Great peephole scene where he's just like losing his mind and stuff. It's really well done, really cool. Great movie if you haven't seen it, The Cable Guy. Very, very good movie. Well, yeah, that's how I'm kind of feeling here. This has been it's been good. It's been a good read. I'm excited to see what else is coming up next week, most likely, because we're in October now, and so the plan at the moment is one video per week while I kind of figure out the next stuff. I want to be able to kind of do a little bit more work on my project, because I've kind of pushed it on the back burner for a little too long, and I feel a little bad about that. And I really want to get some more inspiration going, get back on that, so we can start getting you some longer stories, some maybe other more interactable elements and things like that. Yeah, it's just all a matter of time. I'm still figuring out what the pivot's going to be for this channel. I want to be able to give you longer videos. I want to be able to give you, whether it be stories or whether it be other ideas that I've got that maybe involve horror-esque things, such as I feel like I'd like to be able to cover like real-world horrifying mysteries and things like that, or I suppose you can always do like true crime, but I feel like there's a lot of that already. I want to cover other kind of like scary, real situations. Maybe not so much fictional. I'd like to branch into nonfiction a little bit, or at least like horrifying mysteries, things like that. I think that'd be really fun. So yeah, I'll kind of do a little bit of research. If there's any specific things or topics you think you'd like me to look into first, maybe to kind of get an idea of some of these videos, let me know down in the comments below. I do read the comments. I don't respond to all of them, but I do read them. I do see pretty much every single one that comes in, which is really good. If it's a reply, I don't tend to see those. But if it's a straight up comment, I will see those. I do get notified about that. So it's great to hear from you guys, simply because it helps me get an idea of what else you would like. What else can I do? And yes, I know obviously the number one thing probably you guys want is Twitter stories. And you will get those as time goes on, as there are more coming out. But I've kind of covered the main ones. I haven't really found any other ones. If there are any, they might be smaller or not really horror or anything like that, And so it's like, I feel like that's ideally what you want. There's probably other really cool Twitter stories I could look into. I'll have to do a bit of research and see what I can find. But it's not exactly the platform it once was for storytelling. So yeah, I need other suggestions. If you want me to cover more stories, that's fine. Give me other places you want me to look. Give me other creators I can reach out to. Anything along those lines. All your help really helps push us forward. I've been Nate Knight, and I have had a fantastic time, and I sure hope you have too. And we will see you for whatever's next. Take care out there. I'm begging you not to upvote this post. Don't upvote this. Don't reply. Every single interaction shifts my reality a little further, and I don't know what happens when there's nothing left to shift. I know how it sounds, but I'm not joking. I'm writing this because every time someone responds to me online, my apartment changes. Small at first. The couch cushion flipped. A mug rotated handle out instead of in. But now it's impossible to ignore. I should stop typing. I should stay offline entirely. But I'm terrified of forgetting. I'm terrified that if I stop documenting, the changes will become permanent, and no one will know. I need someone to know what's happening. That's why I'm posting. It started 2 weeks ago. A coworker texted me, okay, at 9:03 p.m. I checked my phone at 9:04, and when I glanced toward the kitchen, the clock was gone. Just gone. Screw holes in the wall where it hung, nothing else. It was at that moment that I made the connection of the odd changes possibly being connected with interaction with me via technology. I thought I was losing it. Curiosity made me test it. I made a throwaway account and asked strangers to comment. Every single reply shifted something. A picture frame rotated 45 degrees. A dining chair slid closer to the door. My toothbrush multiplied. Now there were 2 of them sitting in the holder. Both damp, both streaked with the exact same bit of toothpaste. That's when I stopped. Too risky. Then my girlfriend, Sam, started texting. Hundreds of messages over 2 hours. I know that's excessive, but we were already in a rocky place before all this happened. She hates when I don't respond right away. I know, kind of toxic, but that's another issue that I'm not worried about at the moment. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I knew if I opened any reply, anything she said could trigger another change. But ignoring her only made her panic, and the notifications kept piling up. When I finally braved my phone to silence the notifications, my apartment had transformed. The living room rug was draped across the ceiling, stretched taut and thin like a skin. It shouldn't have been able to stretch like that without ripping. The couch was flipped upside down, and the fridge had somehow moved into my bedroom, humming against the wall beside my bed. The outlet itself that the fridge was plugged into was stuck firmly into the side of my bed frame. I have no idea how it was even still running. The worst part was the faint sound of drawers slamming, again and again, even though every single one of them had stood wide open. She didn't know what she'd done. I never replied. I haven't told Sam. I can't. I can't risk her texts again. I haven't called my brother either. I want someone close to notice if I disappear, but I can't let them trigger more changes. I tried documenting the pattern. The changes aren't random. They depend on the volume and timing of the interactions. One comment by itself makes small shifts, but a flood of activity all at once causes reality to unravel faster. That's why Sam's barrage of messages nearly destroyed my apartment in one night. And it's not just objects anymore. Yesterday, after 3 upvotes on a test post, I walked into my bathroom and didn't recognize my reflection. It was me, but out of sync. Half a second behind my movements, grinning when I wasn't. I've started keeping a notebook, recording every interaction and every alteration, but the writing is changing too. Last night, I opened the notebook and the ink from older entries had rearranged itself into a single sentence. Keep going. I don't know why I keep posting. Maybe I need proof. Maybe I need witnesses. Maybe it's a cry for help. But every comment, every upvote, every interaction accelerates the chaos. I could feel the apartment. No. The space around me reacting. Objects rearranged while I'm typing. My chair just scraped an inch across the floor on its own. I see Sam's notifications still coming through. 30 new messages. I can't answer. I can't risk it. I won't. My hands shake as I type. The light outside my window hums louder, pulsing in sync with my heartbeat, though my apartment is on the 4th floor and no streetlights should be that close. I know it's coming. The longer I post, the more changes will occur. I don't know if the changes are permanent, or if they're even bound to my apartment. I don't know if reality itself is starting to bend around me. But if I disappear tonight, if my reflection becomes someone else entirely, maybe you'll see this and understand. Maybe someone, somewhere, will see the warning. Please, whatever you do, don't reply. Don't upvote. Just read and remember. I checked my reflection one more time tonight, and it was smiling at me. I'm going to do everything in my power to make this a single post. I can't chance any more online presence. If things get too crazy and something happens that I have no choice but to tell the world, I might make an update. If things somehow calm down and all of this stops, I'll let you know too. In the meantime, please keep quiet on my posts. It could be harmful to the very fabric of our reality if you don't. Update. I shouldn't be writing again. I swore I wouldn't. But this morning proved I don't have a choice. The hallway outside my apartment isn't the same anymore. The exit sign at the end, the one I've walked past every day for 2 years, now glows with 4 letters. Stay. The cover isn't bent or cracked. It looks like it's always said that. Like I've been the idiot reading it wrong this whole time. My neighbor's door is gone. Just gone. Smooth drywall where it should be. Like the building had sealed itself overnight. Yesterday I heard him yelling through the wall at his TV. Football, I think. Tonight, silence. When I pounded on the plaster, my knuckles didn't echo. They just stopped. Like the wall swallowed the sound. I've had more interaction than I had hoped from my experience that I have shared. Every interaction online seems to shake the apartment a little further. The bathroom mirror was on the floor when I woke up, propped neatly against the couch. Except the reflection didn't match. In the glass, the living room behind me looked normal. Furniture in place. No stacked chairs, no humming fridge in the wrong room. Just the way it used to be. When I moved to touch it, the reflection lagged half a second behind. The closet door opens to reveal a pile of objects I don't recognize. Yesterday it was jackets and shoes. Today it's 5 mismatched kitchen chairs stacked impossibly, like a tower. Sam messaged me again yesterday. What is happening? 3 words. I stared at them for 10 minutes, shaking, refusing to open the thread. The unread notification on my screen glowed like a warning light. I couldn't resist checking her socials, though. On Instagram, she posted a story of her cat climbing onto the counter. Cute. Normal. Except behind her, every single cabinet was upside down, nailed to the ceiling. Perfectly aligned, perfectly shut. She didn't notice. Nobody in her comments noticed either. I wanted to scream at her through the phone. I wanted to tell her to leave, to get out. But I didn't dare send a word. My brother tried calling last night. I didn't answer. His voicemail came through anyway. I pressed play. It wasn't his voice. It was mine. A whisper. Keep going. Because apparently, what I needed was a motivational speaker version of myself living in my brother's phone. Against every instinct in my body, I called him back. He picked up on the second ring. Hello? His voice was normal, sleepy, familiar. Don't text me. Don't call me, I said. Something's wrong. Every time someone reaches out, things change here. And now it's spreading. I saw it in Sam's apartment. I think you'll be next. He laughed, short and nervous. You sounded sane, man. I'm serious, I snapped. My neighbor's gone. His whole apartment is gone. Don't reach out again. Please. Just pretend I don't exist. A pause. Then, you need help. And then the line changed. His voice crackled, deepened, slowed down like a tape dragging. Keep posting. I hung up so hard I dropped the phone. I haven't called him back. The notebook I was using to track the changes is worthless now. The pages rewrite themselves overnight, ink spiraling into circles and symbols I don't recognize. They layer over each other until the paper looks burned. I tore one out last night and stuffed it in the trash. This morning, it was taped to my ceiling, directly above my bed. I didn't put it there. And unless I'm sleep floating like a goth Mary Poppins, I don't know who did. Even the small stupid things are getting worse. I left a plate in the sink. When I came back, it was stacked neatly with 3 identical plates, each with the same crumb in the same spot. My toothbrush is still multiplied, but instead of 2 perfectly used copies sitting side by side, tonight there were 9. At this rate, I'm going to have enough dental equipment to open a practice. The kitchen lights blink at odd intervals now, sometimes in staccato bursts like they're laughing at me. The microwave door refuses to close properly, and when it does, it clicks open on its own, like it's testing boundaries. Even the fridge seems to hum a little louder, vibrating in a rhythm I swear matches the number of new comments on my original post. The air smells wrong now, like melted plastic and iron. The shadows don't just bend anymore, they reach. I saw one stretch over my shoulder as I typed this, its hand-shaped smear hovering an inch above my keyboard. And yet, I can't stop writing. The pull is unbearable. It doesn't feel like I'm choosing to post anymore. It feels like the post is choosing me. Like the story is using me to spread. And judging by the comments and upvotes from my first post, the story seems hungry. And maybe that's the point. Maybe this isn't about my apartment at all. Maybe it's about dragging as many of you into it as possible. So, if your lights flicker tonight, if you catch your reflection lagging behind your own movements, or if you hear your voice whispering from the dark, don't say I didn't warn you. And for the love of God, don't interact. And that was I'm Begging You Not to Upvote This Post by Specific Brain 6752. That is a very specific brain. I mean, you got like a proper number and everything, like a crazy identifier. Good name. Good name. Good name. This story, I mean, the title alone is what immediately drew me to it because I'm like, that's quite fun. I don't want to upvotes and stuff like that. It's a fun little idea for a story. I like the fact that it's we could draw ideas. We could draw ideas of what's going on, but there's no real confirmation of what's going on or anything like that. It's fun. It really can just play with your imagination, and it really. So for me, I'm getting vibes of like there's some kind of poltergeist activity because things are kind of moving, but then the duplication of stuff. Now that one I didn't quite have an answer for right away. Because if I'm honest with you, I still don't really know how we would. I mean, it's not exactly cloning things, is it? Although I feel like if there were anything that I feel like we could potentially duplicate non-organic, not biological things. I feel like that's probably possible. It's just I wouldn't really know how I would explain it. Because it's not exactly tulpa activity. That's more like they kind of take on like a different forms and stuff like that. But it's more, well, it's more biological in nature compared to like a tulpa that becomes a toothbrush, right? Especially multiple. I don't know. If I'm honest with you, I don't really know how to explain it. I really don't. But I love that. I love not exactly knowing what's going on here. I'm clearly somebody's messing with them. This much I think we can all kind of agree on. There is some entity, some anomaly. There is, for all we know, maybe it's like a demon or something like that. That is confined this person to their space, almost like Silent Hill 4 The Room in a weird way. But I don't know, because the thing is, it doesn't make it sound like they couldn't leave, but I'm going to assume that they can't exactly live their life as normal, because it seems that whenever they respond to any kind of like posts or even like getting messages, anytime anything happens on their phone, or more likely any kind of social aspects, maybe social media or whatever, their apartment changes in some way, shape, or form. And sometimes it's minuscule, but the more notifications, the more things that come through, the bigger the changes can be. And so much so that it seems like his neighbor's apartment in its entirety has just disappeared. Which that's crazy, you know? Like that one, for like, well, can you like, are you able to confirm that like their door isn't even there? Like, I would have liked a little bit more examination of certain things, just to be kind of on the safe side. I like the fact that they're documenting. I like the fact that they're sharing stuff. I like the fact that they feel like they're going crazy, but they have proof that they're not going crazy. There is just crazy stuff happening. It's all very good. Logic-wise, this is all very fun and great. And it's just concerning. Like, I know for me, I wouldn't so much be, I might be scared at first of like things moving on their own. Yeah, that'd probably be a scary thing to start with. But I feel like the longer it goes on and the more messing with me happens, I would just get more and more aggravated, right? And I think that's a good aspect, because it's kind of where I feel like they're going with a little bit of this, where they're just fed up. They're just fed up. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to handle the situation. They're just like, please leave me the fuck alone. I feel like I would end up doing the same if I couldn't figure out what to do or how to stop it or anything like that. Yeah, I completely get that. It's super good. It's super good. Really, really enjoyed it. Yeah, so like I said, things that it made me think about, well, obviously Silent Hill 4, The Room, being trapped in like a space, and it's not exactly a normal space. It kind of changes a little bit, you know. It's not normal, it's fun. I like the fact that they seem to be able to see these kind of changes through reflections. That's quite fun. And I feel like I should have had something for this. I suppose it kind of brings me back to that Oculus movie, where like there's almost like an entire different world basically through the mirror. But I feel like that trope yet again has been brought up time and time again. I've probably even mentioned it quite a number of times. And it's always fun. It's always super fun knowing that it's almost like there's an entirely separate world behind the mirror. I know in some cases it's reflection. In some cases it seems like it's completely different entirely. Really strange. Not sure. I don't know. I'd love to know. I'd love to know what's going on. There's been some interesting comments as well, including the OP replying to some of these, and some of them are good questions. I think they're worth bringing up. So Chemical Threat asks, does this only apply to phone notifications, or is it computers and tablets too? And our Specific Brain says, I don't have a tablet, so I'm not sure, but it's very much happening with my laptop as well. In which case, it looks like it's not isolated to cell service. And Chemical Threat continues asking, do you use your own Wi-Fi or borrow from the creepy neighbor with ancient talismans on the door? Right? Excellent questions. Completely agree. But if there does end up being maybe more updates, I might keep my eyes open. Not gonna lie. It's very good. Well, I have been Nate at Night. I have had a fantastic time, and I sure hope you have too. Thank you so much for your love and support, and we will, we'll see you for whatever's next. Take care out there. My phone keeps getting voice messages from myself. They're recorded while I'm asleep. I was at the bus stop by the time I had a moment to check my phone. I responded to several messages from friends and family, then frowned. There was a message from myself. From my work number to my personal number. Shit. I usually send myself messages as reminders, to remember to bring certain stuff to work, to send an email, etc. I wondered what I might have forgotten to pack as I opened the message thread. It was a voice message. I frowned. I don't usually leave voice messages. I popped in my earphones and played it. Jen, this is me, Jen, but the intact one. They've carved out your memories, suppressed them, wiped him from existence. There's so much you don't remember. You have to remember. Please, The recording cut off there. I stared at the message in shock. I didn't remember recording that voice message, but it was my voice. Entirely mine. Unmistakably mine. There was something incredibly unsettling about hearing your voice saying words you didn't say. Then I sucked in a breath of relief. AI. That was probably it. My phone had probably been hacked. A scammer was sending me an AI-constructed voice message. I felt a tingle of unease. The AI voice was so accurate. But at least the mystery was solved. The bus came then, and I put it out of my mind. I would reformat my phone later at night. I reformatted my phone, but the messages kept coming, always with the same ominous messages, that I had forgotten a large part of my life, that I had forgotten a whole person, someone important to me, that they had suppressed my memories. They weren't even creative about it. I mean, when a scam isn't working, try something else, right? I took it to a tech guy who couldn't figure it out. I didn't want to buy a new phone, so I just ignored the messages. The annoying thing was that sometimes I ignored my own messages of reminders because of that. I only began to fear when I first lost time. One minute I was in a taxi, staring into space, mind grazing on whatever pointless topics. The next I was at a random building somewhere in the city. At a part of the city I've never been to before. I had no idea how I got there. When did I get out of the taxi? Did I pay the driver? Did I bus? How long had I been standing there? I looked at the building before me. Nothing out of the ordinary. The typical grey, gloomy facade of industrial buildings where dreams go to die. I left. Walking to the nearest bus stop, my knee gave out at one point, but I caught myself before I fell. I sat at the seat and clasped my shaking hands together. What happened? Why did I not remember? The sky was nearly dark. I looked at my phone. I'd lost about 4 hours. Hours completely unaccounted for. That's when I saw it. Another voice message. I squashed my rising fear and played it. Jen, you stubborn bitch. Listen to me for fuck's sakes. Wake up. This is not a joke. Not a prank, not a scam, nothing like that. This is real. Do you not remember him? Dean? How could you forget? I don't care what they did to your brain. You ought to remember him anyway. Your body, your emotions. Isn't there any inkling of who Dean, the love of your life, might have been? I paused the message. Dean. Was I crazy? Was I imagining it? Was I getting swayed by this scammer? Because I thought I felt a tug in my heart upon hearing his name. I thought I saw a ghost of a silhouette in my mind. I shook my head and played the rest of the message. I'm you. I'm the you that has all the memories. Just believe me, for fuck's sake. They suppressed me, but I'm here. I can only reach you, reach my own body, our body, when you're in a semi-unconscious state. Like a dream state. Even gaining control of your body in that state took me months, and you just kept waking up after a short time. This time, though, it's been an hour. I still have control over our body. Maybe with time, I can regain full control. I can get me back. The real Jen, with the real memories. I recoiled and shut off the message. She was going to take over my body? A faint whisper of logic kicked in. She's not real. She's a scammer, an AI recreation of my voice. A really, amazingly faithful recreation. But not me, nonetheless. But I couldn't believe that whisper. I felt it in my gut. The other Jen was telling the truth. I gulped and pulled up the message again. Played it to the end. I don't know why they killed Dean. Why they erased him from our mind. Well, your mind. I don't know who they are. But I have a vague inkling. Dean had told us about it, remember? That he was onto something that would blow things up. People will be shooketh, was what he said. Everyone in the world will be shooketh. Remember that? I thought hard. Again, it felt like I'd heard those phrases before. I felt a familiar irritation at the use of the word shooketh. Was I making things up? The recording went on. Then he was killed. Then one day, I was here, trapped in your mind. I watched as you went about life, not grieving Dean, acting like he had never existed. And I tried to reach you, but I couldn't. Not until a while back. I've been trying to do some research whenever I got a hold of our body. I've been trying to find the past messages and emails from Dean. They're all gone. I tried to find out who might have done this to us. I posted about our situation on the web, under pseudonyms, with VPN. I gasped. That would explain why I had sudden VPN charges. And someone mentioned having a friend with a similar experience, that it was linked to this company, Elaxia. The thing about Elaxia is, it doesn't have an address, nor a website. But I got in touch with this someone. They shared a location, an industrial building downtown. I'm headed to it right now. Hopefully I retain control long enough to find something out. Wish me luck. And please, just fucking stop ignoring my messages. All of them are completely fake names. Jen, Dean, Alexia. I'm not dumb. I'm not going to get caught this way. Now that I know they're monitoring everything. I shut my eyes and took a few deep breaths. I needed to calm down, to think logically. Could anyone have erased my memories of someone entirely? Wouldn't my friends know? Wouldn't others remember him? I was alone in this city. I've been here 9 months. I've made no good friends yet, but I have friendly colleagues. I don't talk about personal stuff often with them. I don't tell my family much, beyond reassuring them that my life here is awesome and that I'm settling in well. But I talked to my bestie back home about my life. I'm sure I would have talked to her about this Dean, if he existed. I pulled out my phone and texted my bestie. Did I ever talk to you about a Dean? I was nearly home when she responded. No, why? Who's this Dean? Smirk emoji. No, then. There's no way I would not have told her about a supposed love of my life. So this was all bullshit, right? I went to bed early, but I couldn't sleep until 2 a.m. My mind was racing. I was also terrified of other Jen taking hold of my body. I awoke with a start. My neighbor's dog was barking like crazy. I was on the floor of the living room. My head was pounding, like someone had wrapped it in an ever-shrinking helmet. What the hell had other Jen done? I stood up and stumbled. What was that smell? Gas. All of a sudden, I was wide awake. I scrambled for the door, falling a couple of times, then crawling to it and flinging it open. I flopped out into the corridor and crawled farther down. My neighbor's door opened, and I could hear him yelling at his dog, something about not refusing walks in the afternoon if he was going to holler the neighborhood awake at night for a walk. He saw me sprawled on the ground of the corridor and rushed to help me up. We ended up waiting downstairs as the police and other personnel arrived. Our immediate neighbors were evacuated, and it took a good 2 hours before we were allowed back home. Apparently, a gas leak had occurred in only my apartment, with no other damages in the building's gas lines. You better believe I bought the highest quality kibble for that dog the next day, and gave it the world's longest scritches. But misfortune kept following me. I was nearly hit by a car. Some kindly Samaritan yanked me out of the way. A taxi I was in had its engine catch fire. Both the driver and I barely made it out before it exploded. I was lucky the driver had incredibly quick thinking. The moment he noticed some smoke, he veered to a road shoulder and ordered me out of the car with him. It blew up seconds after. I'd never seen an engine go from smoking to boom in such a short time before. I kept accumulating people I owed great debts to. Other Jen messaged often. She apologized for being naive, thinking a VPN would successfully mask our activities online. She claimed that my bestie had her memories erased too, but it was a drawing she made that sucker punch me in the gut. She had used AI to create a portrait of Dean. She said it was close as she could prompt it. Looking at that portrait, I felt something squeeze in my chest, and warm tears tingled my eyes. I looked at that face, and I knew. I knew there was once a Dean. Right? Other Jen told me our time was limited, that they had found out that other Jen existed, that they had run out of ethical fucks to give. Apparently, erasing my memory, wiping Dean from existence, was their way of being ethical. They weren't villains, or so they liked to think. That was Alexia's MO. They would do whatever it takes to obtain their objective, but where possible, they liked to avoid murder. But they were happy to do it when necessary. My recent actions, or rather those of other Jens, had put a mark on me. I had to go. I just hoped I hadn't painted a target on my bestie's back by even mentioning Dean. The police didn't believe a word of what I was saying. And by going to the police, I had made it known to official authorities that I knew about what these people had done. To me. To Dean. Someone's in my apartment. I can hear them. They're trying to be stealthy, but I recognize that muffled slide of socks on ground. I have a nail gun ready. That was all I could get. And a baseball bat. And some beer bottles for throwing. I'm going to call the police. But once I do, and speak aloud to the police, I believe they will attack. I wish I could leave other Jen a goodbye message. A floorboard creaked, right outside my door. I'm hitting post. Wish me luck. And that was My Phone Keeps Getting Voice Messages from Myself. They're recorded while I'm asleep. By Signed, Sealed, Delivered. I'm assuming that's how we pronounce SYLED. In which case, clever. I like it. Really good. I could be wrong though, in which case correct me. So, I like this story because I initially thought that it was going to be that there's like a split personality kind of thing going on, or maybe there's a second entity or a different person, maybe inhabiting the body that would like try to take over from time to time. And I wasn't totally wrong. It's not exactly a split personality. It's more like it's strange because and I mean I'll allude the fact that I think this very much feels like it's very similar to Severance, the TV show that I'm super into at the moment, and but we'll kind of talk a little bit about that. But it seems based on the context of what's gone on in the story so far that the intact Jen or other Jen is the original Jen, and it's almost like that version of Jen has been pushed further into the mind, maybe more like in the subconscious level, right? So they're not able to truly take dominion over the body anymore. Whereas there is a version of Jen that is, which means that Jen had to be created in some way, shape, or form, maybe like a personality split or something like that. I'm assuming the Alaxia company has something to do with it, most likely. As to why they would kill Dean and eradicate his existence from probably not even just her memory, but maybe even other people's memories, seems pretty hardcore. That seems pretty hardcore. Maybe he had some major dirt on this company. Could very well be the case. Wouldn't be crazy. Wouldn't be crazy if you ask me. So yeah, I like the fact that Jen is trying to figure out the situation. She's trying to find out what is true, what is not true. She's quite skeptical, and I completely understand that. I believe you've got to have a big level of skepticism when it comes to anybody who sounds like they can impersonate you, whether it be yourself or not, right? If you don't remember doing it, I'm with her on like the figure out what the fuck it is train. I think that's really good. I liked this. I like this a lot. I like the fact that I'm still not 100% convinced of other Jen. Right? I'm not convinced that is for sure just regular Jen. I feel like there is something else going on here. Because it's weird that all of a sudden Jen's life is in crazy danger. Right? Very weird. But for all I know, maybe that's other Jen doing something to save her, to protect her. But the gas one is the one that kind of confuses me. Because, so it happened while she was asleep in her own apartment. Or, no, I think it was apartment. And basically, you know, luckily got to wake up before anything super bad happened with the gas leak, you know, such as like, I don't know, she dying, for example. But that could have only happened, so no other gas leaks happened except for in her apartment specifically. But she was the only one with access to it at the time, which makes me think other Jen would have done that. Why would other Jen try to kill her? I don't know, but that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking other Jen is not who she says she is. But that's my thoughts. I'm curious to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Let me know. I'd really like to know your thoughts. That's kind of where I am in this story, which makes me really confused and intrigued at the same time. So things this made me think about. Naturally, I brought up the TV show Severance because it's a fantastic example. Simply because and it's not exactly major spoilers here. It's stuff that gets established within like the first 2 episodes. By signing up to work for this corporation, or at least the specific division, to my understanding, maybe there's other places to do it. I'm not entirely sure, but basically, they have this severance floor, and if you work there, you're agreeing to have your personality basically split into 2. You have your innie, which is the one that works, like, you know, they only exist when they're at work, and then your outie, which is the real you, the one that doesn't, the one that gets to do everything else besides work. Now, you still have to go to work and everything and leave work. Like, it's not like you're 2 people at the same time. No, you're inhabiting the same body. But it is like there are 2 versions of you. One is only active at work, one is only active outside of work. It's very interesting, and it makes you question a lot of things like why such weird secrecy? Why all this? They're not allowed to communicate with each other, even though they're the same person. There's all manner of stuff about it that is just like, it's really interesting and it's really bizarre and it's really mysterious. Got very heavy vibes of that, which I'm really all for. Otherwise, other ones that'll make me think about are Split, because yet again, it's about the personality, dissociative identity disorder, or some people call it like a personality split, I suppose. And yeah, it's not exactly the same, of course not, but it's just the only other one of the only other things that immediately came to mind about like having more than one version of the same person. You could also, I suppose, you could also talk a little bit about Fight Club as well as an option. If you don't know why I'm bringing up Fight Club, I mean, it's not exactly perfectly in line with it, because well, I don't exactly want to spoil it, but basically because Tyler Durden is not real. Sorry, that is a spoiler. I'm so sorry if you didn't want a spoiler about Fight Club from the fucking 90s. But yeah, so there you go. God, I mean, I suppose that there are other like personality splits or dissociative identity disorder choices. Of course, I mean, Shutter Island kind of has a bit of that. Psycho, like with Norma Bates and stuff. Yeah, that kind of works. There's a number. I'm sure I could bring up, but we'll be here all day if we do that. Yeah, so that's those are things to think about. I've super enjoyed the story, and I sure hope you have too. I have been Nate at Night, and we'll see you next time. Take care out there. When I was a kid, everyone I know played a horrible prank on me. This is something I should probably be speaking about with a therapist, I know. I would, or I have been. But that's not really an option anymore. In fact, I couldn't tell you how many times I've told the story to various medical professionals. I'm 30 now, 20 years since it happened. I just wanted to stop. I was a pretty average kid, I think. A little weird, but every kid is a little weird. I had an older sister, and we fought like two cats. I had a couple good friends, most of whom lived on my street or one street over, and we would meet after school and play until it was time for dinner. My life was fairly ideal. I played soccer, I think. Honestly, I have a lot of trouble remembering much of my childhood. But I remember that I got a Nintendo DS for my 10th birthday, and we had a big party in the backyard. Practically the whole neighborhood showed up. My birthday was just before school got out for the summer, so the air buzzed with excitement, and the evening was warm and felt more alive than other nights. The grown-ups started a fire in our little fire pit, and they sat around it and drank beer while we ran around. I was allowed to stay up past when I usually went to bed, and the other kids chased fireflies with me and roasted marshmallows until late. I remember going to bed happy, excited for summer, and exhausted. I fell asleep quickly, the peel and stick glow-in-the-dark stars and moons shining on the ceiling above my head. Waking up the day after my birthday, something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it. I hadn't had a nightmare. It wasn't that. I had slept better than I could really remember ever sleeping. It was late. I realized that must be it. My mom usually woke me up around 8 if it wasn't a school day. She said it was a good habit to be in the routine of waking up early and starting your day on the right foot. By the light streaming in from my windows and the slightly muggy heat in the room, I figured it was already 10 a.m. or so. I smiled, sliding out of bed. It must have been one final birthday treat, letting me sleep in. She had let me sleep in the day before, too, of course. Although on my birthday itself, I'd wanted to get up as early as possible. "Mom?" I called into the hallway, poking my head out the door. No answer. I frowned. It was Saturday, so my dad was definitely already at work. But my mom wouldn't be. My sister wouldn't be home either. She had left the night before to spend the night at her friend's house. She was 13 now, and allowed to have sleepovers, for which I was eternally jealous. I decided she must be out front in the garden. I put on a shirt and left my room. I smelled coffee, but there was none left in the pot. There were dishes in the sink too, with remnants of eggs stuck to a pan. It wasn't necessarily alarming, but it was strange. Even on days I slept in, there was always breakfast left over for me. I opened the front door, opening my mouth to call out to my mom, but I instantly froze. Halfway up our walkway was the mailman. He was on the ground, sprawled out awkwardly on the cement, Fresh blood pooled beneath him in a gruesome splatter. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't move. His limbs were bent at horrible angles. His face pointed away from me. It almost looked like something, some omnipotent force, had lifted him into the air and then slammed him back down. The package he must have been delivering lay a few feet away, the cardboard dented and soaked in red. I didn't need any confirmation he was dead. It wasn't a question. I'd never seen a dead person before. Sometimes my parents had watched horror movies, but that hardly counted. I backed into the house and closed the door behind me. My mind was racing too fast and my heart felt like it might burst out of my chest. Everything in my body was reeling, so much so that all I could do was move slowly, in a faux sense of calm. "Mom!" I called out again, into the silent house, my voice breaking. "Mom, are you home? Something happened outside. Mom!" No one answered. The house felt way too quiet. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. I had to brace myself against the wall as I made my way to my parents' room, because I was almost shaking too hard to hold myself up. "Mom!" I pushed open her bedroom door. It creaked, the sound almost deafening against the silence that blanketed the room. Our old grey cat, Gumbo, weaseled her way through the crack and slipped out into the hallway, brushing against my leg on her way. I saw a lump in the bed. For a moment, I thought it was just pillows. But then I realized it couldn't have been. The bed was made, and all the pillows were accounted for, leaning against the headboard. "Mom, are you asleep?" It came out as a whisper. Even though it wasn't like I had been trying not to wake her up, I wanted her awake, badly. I think I just somehow already knew. Something was hanging in the air. This heaviness, like the whole world had been blanketed in a thing that was empty and hot and dead. A desert popped into my head. A place that was so far away from everything and completely devoid of anything. Devoid of life. When I pulled back the covers, the shock washed over me like an electric zap. Every one of my veins and bones and muscles felt 20 degrees hotter than they should have been. There was blood everywhere. I could barely see any section of the sheets that wasn't soaked in it. It looked like the cherry juice we sometimes made from the tree in our backyard, squashing the berries with our hands and laughing as the sticky syrup trickled down our wrists. Her eyes were open. Her mouth was open too, wide open, like she was about to scream. I gagged, stumbling backwards and almost falling down. My legs felt like they wouldn't work anymore. I was in a daze as I stumbled back to the kitchen. The eggs on the pan seemed like they were mocking me now. I knew my parents had told me what to do in an emergency, but all of that was gone from me now. This didn't feel like an emergency. It felt more like a horrible nightmare. I pinched myself on the arm, just in case. The neighbors. That was it. I was supposed to call my neighbors. The number was on a sticky note next to the phone. My fingers shook as I dialed the number. They picked up after 3 rings that felt like they took 1 year each. I heard a sort of crackling sound, like someone was moving the phone around. "Hello?" Hi. I cleared my throat, trying to get rid of the lump firmly lodged at the back of my tongue. "This is Jackson, from next door." I heard some sort of giggle, a choked one, like they were trying to hold it back, and then some hushed whispering. "Hi, Jackson," the voice said. I assumed it was the mother, Mrs. Winston. "Is everything all right? Can I help you with something?" Something happened. My mom." "Oh, honey," Mrs. Winston said, her tone gentle, but something about it felt deeply off. My stomach twisted. "Why don't you head on over here, We'll figure out what's going on together." "Okay." I remember hanging up before she said anything else. Something about her voice was unnerving me. Still, I didn't know where else to go. I slipped out the back door so I wouldn't have to walk past the mailman. Gumbo watching me go. I knocked on the neighbor's door. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. I stepped onto the flower beds, peering in through the windows. Someone was lying on the couch, their head tilted back like they were staring up at the ceiling. For a moment, that was what I thought was happening. Until I saw that their chest was opened up like a patient on a surgery table, all guts and organs and blood. So much blood. It was Mr. Winston, in his sweater vest and brown dad shorts. Dead like the mailman. Dead like my mom. Something came over me, and I burst through the front door. It was unlocked, which I hadn't really expected, so I went tumbling into the room, landing on my stomach, my face slamming into the floor. Face to face with Mrs. Winston, who lay dead in front of the phone. Her eyes were open too. There was a fly on one of them, crawling across the white, pausing every few seconds to rub its hands together. I had started to cry. It was finally hitting me that this was real, not some dream, and I desperately wanted my mom. I scrambled to my feet, nearly throwing up when I realized my face was covered in her blood. I swiped at it with my hands, trying to wipe it away as quickly as possible. Then instinctively, I licked my lips. Horrified, I braced myself for the coppery taste of the blood on my tongue. But it never came. It was sweet. I hesitated, trembling incessantly, before cautiously raising one of my red fingers to my lips. Sweet. Memories flooded my mind. Memories of baking with my grandmother. The sweet syrup we would sometimes pour into the mixing bowls. It was fucking corn syrup. I ran to my father's work, which was on the other side of town. By the time I got there, I was close to passing out and drenched in sweat. But it had made it a little easier to get here with the road completely devoid of cars. There were some, parked on the side of the road or every now and then in the middle of it, but none of them had people in them. Some of them had blood, thick and red and gooey blood. The nice receptionist that was always at the front desk and always gave me candy when my dad brought me in had her head against the computer. Her hair was matted with red liquid, as if someone had ripped out entire chunks of her scalp. Before I could think too hard about it, I wiped my finger across the side of her head and licked it. It was sweet, too. I felt like my brain was going to break, like I was standing on the edge of something completely incomprehensible. I shook the woman. She flopped like a rag doll. I sobbed, shoving her, and she slumped to the ground, her head knocking against the tiles. "Wake up!" I screamed at her. "I know you're not dead!" She didn't move an inch. Just stared, unblinking, her mouth hanging half open. I ran into the room my dad usually worked in, scanning it for his workspace. I couldn't remember where it was, just that it was around halfway back, and close to the wall. In every cubicle, someone was dead. Sometimes they looked halfway peaceful, as if they'd been caught by surprise. But most of them were eviscerated in one way or another. Entrails hanging out, bones showing, blood sprayed against the walls, even some with faces ripped clean off. It was like something unseeable had swept through the town on a rampage. But all of their blood was made of corn syrup. In a brave moment, I even touched one of the organs, something that looked like a strange deflated balloon, and it jiggled, but more like plastic than a human body part. At one point, I swore I heard a giggle behind me. I whipped around, but no one was there. I found my dad at the water cooler, sitting against the wall, cone pip cup still gripped loosely in his hand. He stared straight ahead, blood leaking from his eyes, nose, and mouth, like he'd exploded from the inside. "Dad," I whispered, grabbing his shoulder. "This isn't funny. Please, stop." There was a strange look on his face that I could just barely make out through the red. Almost like a smile. Like a smile someone would only make if they were trying very hard not to. I walked back home down the middle of the road, balancing on the yellow lines to have something to focus on, because I was fairly certain if I stopped walking, I wouldn't start again. When I got there, I climbed into bed and I closed my eyes. I didn't know what else to do. Eventually, after what must have been hours and hours of lying there, I drifted off into a restless sleep. I woke up to someone shaking my shoulder. I screamed, scrambling away from them, immediately wide awake and terrified. "Whoa!" My mom backed away, smiling. "Sorry, buddy, I didn't mean to scare you." I was breathing hard. I looked her over, clutching my chest. She was completely fine. She looked it, at least. She stood there in a white blouse and blue jeans, her hair tied up like always, her eyes bright and happy. What day is it?" Her smile faded, and she frowned a little. It was then that I noticed the smell of bacon wafting in from the kitchen. It's Sunday, bud, remember? 2 days after my birthday. So, yesterday had been real. What happened yesterday? She placed the back of her hand on my forehead, tutting softly. Did one of those neighborhood kids you play with get you sick, honey? Do you feel okay? I dropped it, because I didn't know what to say. I convinced myself maybe I really was sick. Maybe it had been some kind of feverish hallucination. And I was so relieved to see her. I didn't want to think about any of it anymore. I went to eat breakfast, sitting at the table between my dad and my sister, and everything was normal. But when I left the house later that day, I saw it. On the walkway leading up to our house, there was something pink on the pavement. A faint pink stain. Like something sweet and red and sticky had been recently scrubbed away. Like I said, it's been 30 years. I've been feeling like I had almost recovered from that incident. I had asked everyone I knew countless times about that day, but none of them seemed to have any idea what I was talking about. But still, I had almost let it go. And it had never happened again. Not until today. Today, when I walked into my therapist's office, it seemed strangely quiet. There was usually music playing, something soothing and soft, and there were people in the waiting room and at the front desk typing on a keyboard. But today, nothing. No one. Silence. I let myself into Dr. Sheldon's office, perplexed. Which is when I found her dead on the carpet, her blood sprayed across all the walls, even dripping from the ceiling. It was crazy, I know that, but I immediately tasted it. Sweet. I rolled her over, and her eyes were open, a strange smile on her face. This time I did something I didn't think to do as a kid. I checked her pulse. She's alive. I don't know what to do. I can't believe they're doing this to me again. Do they think this is funny? And that was, when I was a kid, everyone I know played a horrible prank on me by Orange PLR. Now this story is quite interesting. The story is really interesting and for a number of reasons. So we have this prank, and when I read everyone I know played a horrible prank on me, I was like, oh, what, did he like walk into a room and there was like a bunch of dead people faking prank, something like that, like something that happened at like a birthday party or something, right? Is kind of my initial assumption, which wasn't entirely wrong. But this goes hard. This goes wild. The fact that, like, so there's an entire day that they live where not just the people in their own house are killed, but also the mailman outside, the neighbors, and then all the way across town to his dad's work. Like, so many people are involved in this prank. It's strange. It's much. It really makes me question what the fuck is actually going on here, because I don't fully believe it's a prank. Although I guess it could be. It's crazy to me. Look, if it was like, if it was a prank that involved like his house and all the houses on like a street or something, I could probably believe that. But this involves like at least a town-sized place, which is a lot of people. It's a lot of people to do this much effort within an 8-hour time window. Let's say that's how long they slept. To have like abandoned cars and just, it's wild. It's absolutely wild. And yet the fact that, yet again, it's not confirmed that everybody's blood tasted like the corn syrup, but let's roll with it. Let's roll with this hypothesis at the moment of it's all a prank. Why? Why to such an extreme? This feels like it's going to cause some major trauma. This is disturbing levels of prank. This isn't just like a haha we got you. This is a everybody you know and love is dead. And then not jumping out with a haha we got you, but letting them believe that for an entire day. It's strange. It's baffling to me. And the fact that, like, they also got zero closure about the fact after this prank. Nobody ever came forward and admitted it was a prank. And then 30 years later, or I suppose 20 years later, whatever, it's happening again. It's strange. It's so strange. So yet again, like I said, that's if we go with if we go down the option of it being a prank. It's an elaborate prank. It's an insane prank, and one that they've decided to keep secret for so many years. There's so much to it that just, like, for me, doesn't fit narratively wise in my head that it's a prank, right? But there is evidence that it is a prank. Which then leads me to my next hypothesis, my next theory of the fact that maybe it was a hallucination. I don't know what caused said hallucination, or I suppose you could even call it like a dream/nightmare. It could be that. I feel that's kind of all in the same camp. Because you can lucid dream, where you can really, like, get a little bit more control over the situation. You can, you know, I believe some people. I mean, I've only maybe lucid dreamed a few times in my life. I haven't really actively tried to do it crazy amounts or anything like that. But I have heard from people. Yet again, this is just hearsay. I don't have any sources to cite or anything like that. This is just because I know maybe like a few people who are really into lucid dreaming, and they make it sound like, you know, after a point it does feel like it's believable when you've done it enough times. It feels, I mean, you still might be aware that you're in a dream though, and that's what allows you to really do the lucid side of the dreaming, is because it's more vivid and you're more control and active and stuff like that. But you know, even though it's believable, that doesn't. I mean, they still know it's a dream, though. They still know it's fake, right? Like, I don't know. But, I mean, a hallucination or a dream or nightmare at least makes a bit more sense to me. That that's what's going on. And that these things didn't actually happen. It would also explain why nobody knows what the fuck he's talking about. Even though I guess it's not that they don't know what he's talking about. It's more that they just almost aren't talking about it at all. Oh, bless you. Okay, Sebastian. And, you know, sneezed by my feet. Wasn't ready for that. It was weird. Cat sneezed on my foot. He likes to hang out with me. I can't blame him. Good cat. But yeah, that's kind of my. Those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts, because it's strange. I guess there could be some entity involved, but there is like zero evidence of that. Who freaking knows? And yet again, why only play with this one person? A lot of weird shit. A lot of things that don't make a lot of sense. But it's a horrifying situation, and I know I certainly wouldn't want to be in it. That is for freaking sure. I mean, talk about being unfazed by death in your future, thinking that there's a good potential that it's fake, right? Like that's messed up. It's messed up. It's messed up. So yeah, if it was indeed a prank, horrible is a great way to describe it. I would have big issues trusting people. Tell you that much. That poor guy, man. Well, it's messed up. I really want to know what you think of the situation. What do you think is going on? Because it's if it is a prank, it's fucking dark. It's big and it's dark and it's wild. How'd you get so many people involved? It's crazy. So when it comes to things that's made me think about, though, not a massive amount, which is strange because I feel like this would line up with a lot of good things. There is one in particular, though, that did come to my mind. It's a film from the 1980s. This is called April Fool's Day. And spoiler alert, there's April Fool's pranks in it. But these aren't just regular pranks. They go pretty freaking... they go a little dark. Okay, so early on, it's not that bad. But it does get more worse, and inevitably there is death, which is faked. That's kind of the only... See, the only... It wasn't meant to be full-on pranks, even though that's obviously what April Fool's Day is about, goofs and pranks and shit. But it is about. I mean, there is fake death. There's fake death, and it tricks people. So there is that in line. That's kind of the only, sadly, the only thing that really came to my mind. But yeah, that's good. It's a good little story. I've really enjoyed it. I'm currently working on well, I should be doing more work in the Dear David comparison review video. I need to really do that. So that's going to be probably the next major thing I'm going to work on. Besides that, though, there is something that's kind of surprised me lately. And I might have to do a little video on it. I'm really curious, because I feel like AI is continuing to get out of hand. It's a tool. I think that's how it should be viewed. That's how it should be used, and that is understandable. I do not think it should be a replacement. But there is an AI actress now. So yeah, I might do a little video about that. Because it's not like a small thing. No, they're calling her an actress. I say her. She is represented as a female person. Anyway, yeah, I'll think about doing that. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Nate at Night, and I've had a fantastic time, and I sure hope you have too. See you for whatever's next. Take care out there. There's an invisible gorilla in my house with the only key, and I just put on banana cologne. Part 1. Okay, so it isn't banana cologne, but it seems to be agitating him. Or her. Wherever they are, I really don't know. But I'm scared shitless. I was getting ready for a date when something happened. I texted Sheila that I was looking forward to seeing her, and I was about to put on my shoes ready to walk out the door. My house shook. Not violently enough that cabinet doors flew open and dishes spilled out and crashed on the floor. It was more like when I was in 2nd grade and the whole class felt the room jiggle, and we found out there'd been an earthquake in Pennsylvania when we got home. I peeked out my bedroom window to see if anything looked off outside. Nothing appeared out of the ordinary. A car rode past and some children were playing in the front yard across the street. They didn't seem to have noticed whatever I'd felt, and I wrote it off as the house just settling. I went back to my text and typed, "See you soon," and hit the send arrow. Scheiße, I said. I like to say shit in German. I got that same swear flavor without the guilt. My manager and I were the only men in an office of about 25 women. I found out firsthand how raunchy a group of women could be, but I got looks if I used bad words. The text hadn't gone through, though. I sighed with both relief and disappointment. I corrected my misspelled and hit send again. It still didn't go through. The angry little red exclamation mark appearing under my message. After failing to send my message a couple more times, I decided to call. Nothing happened for a long period. Then my phone booped and displayed that the call had failed. Maybe the house shaking hadn't just been in my head. But just to be sure, I stepped out of my bedroom and into the hall, holding my cell up for a signal. I'd belatedly seen it had no bars. But something out here smelled. My first thought was it smelled like a farm, but revised that after a second smell. It was more like a zoo stench. I slowed, but walked into what felt like a tiny, hairy mountain that stopped me as soon as I came in contact with it. It moved, and I was suddenly semi-airborne, sliding to a stop several feet away. A few seconds passed before I felt the throb in my arm where something powerful had hit me. I sat up slowly, mentally assessing the damage to my body. My fingers and toes worked and my vision was clearing by degrees. Other than my arm, which I could still move. I seemed to be alright. Something was ahead of me. I couldn't make my eyes focus on it. But I could hear it. And I could definitely smell it. That zoo smell. It was like elephants. Or maybe camels. I remember loving found out to the zoo when I was a kid and just accepted that the smell came with it. In time, I kind of grew to love it in a way. But this was different. This was in my home. And it was really strong because it was close. I rolled up onto my knees and blinked several times. I still didn't see anything. Maybe whatever had hit me had gone downstairs, but then something pushed against the guardrail until it cracked. It grunted again, like breaking a part of my house had surprised it. This time the sound had been enough for me to identify it, and it sounded close enough that it couldn't have been downstairs or anywhere but right in front of me. It was a gorilla, and I couldn't see it. I didn't believe what my senses were telling me, but I wasn't bold or stupid enough to ignore them. An invisible gorilla didn't make sense, but it hadn't been a figment of my imagination that had swatted me like a fly. I realized I was sweating. For some reason, I was still thinking about the date I should have been driving to right now, and feeling like this was an inconvenience. I was going to have to shower and change clothes. In that moment, I was hoping she'd understand why I was late. I was of two minds. One was thinking about my date. The other was how I was going to get away from this wild animal without being pounded to death in the next few seconds. If I'd realized my science in that moment, I would have known this situation could have played to my advantage, and also how much more danger I was actually in. The gorilla began audibly sniffing. When it sneezed, I could help the laugh that escaped me. That was a mistake. The hairs all over my body prickled, and I smelled myself. It was as if my senses dialed in and I saw in sharp detail, felt the nap of the carpet beneath my fingertips, tasted the bitter film on my tongue, and smelled the flop sweat layered on my skin mixing with my new cologne that reminded me distinctly in that moment of bananas. The stairs were on the other side of the gorilla. My heart beat against my chest like there was something in there with it and it desperately wanted to get out. I could try to run past, and in hindsight, that may have worked. But right then, I was afraid of another blow like the first. It charged at me. My mind colored in the ape knuckle running where I heard pounding fists on the floor. "Oh no," I said, turtling up and falling onto my back. It ran into a little sliver of wall between the guest bedroom and the bathroom, punching into the drywall like someone had hurled a bowling ball into it. It screamed, or whatever that excited sound is called that gorillas make before falling somewhere next to me. It was close enough that I could feel the heat of its body. Yes, it really was invisible. This had to be a good time to move. It was either go now or wait for it to right itself and pound me into a fine mist. I rolled over and tried to do a push-up into a standing position, but my arm hurt so much, the pain shocked me and I fell on my side. "Oh, Scheiße," I said and cradled my arm, too overwhelmed with pain to move. I'd stubbed the hell out of my toe once, the pain gradually building until I was almost overcome with agony. It hadn't been broken, and this pain reminded me of that, except all grown up. I was effectively paralyzed. But the ape's agitated snorting and grunting settled. I could feel it feeling around, as if searching for its keys. It didn't occur to me that it was searching for me until its paw, handpaw, found me and began feeling over my body like I might have had its keys. It was rough, but not like it was trying to hurt me. It seemed more like how one animal might handle one of its own. But it did manage to give me a nightmare of a purple nurple. I made a mental note to check if my nipple had been ripped off later. It came in closer with its face and sniffed somewhere around my shoulder. I whimpered or tickled a little. Apparently, absolute terror can cause a kind of synesthesia in how my body responded to it. The moment was broken, though. I felt it pull away and snarl. It was time to go. I sat up and rolled forward in one clunky motion. I heard two heavy thuds right where I had been, my mind coloring in mighty, fist-sized divots in the carpet. I heard wood crack, and could only imagine what had happened to the framework beneath the floor. I tried to run straight for the stairs, but my brain was firing commands faster than my body could follow. My graceless fleeing almost as dangerous as the animal behind me. I could feel it thumping the floor as it gained ground. The problem was I couldn't slow down, and that I had to, or I'd launch from the top of the stairs and break every part of me going down. With 3 feet to go before the stairs, I dropped and slid like I was heading for home plate. It had the effect of slowing me down at the right moment, so I overshot the stairs, but not like I was jumping off a cliff. I hit the 4th step down and curled like a pill bug to tumble the rest of the way. My back hit the corner of a step twice, pinching my wind off by the time I hit the bottom. I landed on my ass and tried to take a breath. What came out of me sounded like a kazoo caught in a giraffe's throat. For the first moment, after becoming aware of an invisible gorilla in my home, that wasn't my primary concern. I couldn't breathe, and for a long, panicked moment, thought I was going to die. The gorilla had come tumbling down the stairs and had crashed through the spindles of the handrail, sprawling across the floor over to the side of me. I hoped it was dead, but gorillas always had seemed so tough. It moaned and chuffed, and I suddenly felt bad, even though I was still trying to get even a whistle of air into me. Whatever had happened, however it had gotten here, I was sure it hadn't been in on those decisions if either had been conscious ones at all. I couldn't deny it. Maybe it had been something supernatural that had brought it here. I finally was able to get enough of a breath to get up. I crawled on my hands and feet and pulled myself up by the refrigerator handles before reaching into the cabinet for a glass. I dispensed water from the fridge until I had half of a glass and chugged it. I refilled and turned to sit on a bar stool at the island. I'd already poured a glass and forgotten it on the other end of the island. I'd get it later. The adrenaline dump and having the oxygen banged out of my lungs had me physically drained. and dealing with something that shouldn't have existed was taxing my mental state. So, forgive me for not thinking that I could have crawled to the front door and gotten out. In hindsight, I was glad I'd gotten the water. The glass moved. At first, just a little bit. Then it slid almost off the island. I froze, my own glass to my lips. It lifted, a nice amount sloshing out of the glass. The gorilla sniffed heavily, and then the glass turned. Not all of it went in its mouth, but enough that its audible swallowing was enough to turn my stomach. It was really thirsty. My wheezing was still improving, and it was time to move before it noticed me. I slid off the stool as quietly as possible, my eyes fixed on the floating glass as I moved into the laundry room. My intention was to slip into the garage and open the door and begin outside. I was afraid to not see the glass. It was the only thing I could have reasonably relied on to see where it was. Being in a small space with the gorilla just outside didn't help. It could charge in here any minute, even if it hadn't seen me back in here. I remember the shoes I'd left all over the floor, and looked where I was stepping to avoid tripping. I unlocked the deadbolt and the door handle. They didn't turn the way they normally had, but in the moment, that went ignored. But the knob wouldn't turn. I was afraid it had gotten stuck and I'd have to be loud to get it open. The gorilla would definitely be on me if I couldn't get it open fast enough. It still hurt to move my arm. I tugged on the doorknob. It didn't budge. I wanted to slam my fists into the door, but I contained my outburst before it could get me in trouble. If it wouldn't open, I'd have to try either the front door or the patio. I heard glass break. I guess that meant the gorilla was done drinking. It took my legs a moment to get going. I had an idea before I moved, though. I grabbed the box of laundry detergent from above the washer and clutched it to my chest. I peeked around the threshold of the door. The gorilla was making noises, but I couldn't tell what it was doing. It didn't seem to have seen me. I still had my glass and poked out far enough to underhand pitch it into the living room. It didn't break, but had the desired effect in grabbing the ape's attention. I couldn't tell which way it was facing, but risked it and crept out of the laundry room, around the near side of the island, past the kitchen sink, and to the patio door. I tugged on the handle, stupidly forgetting to unlock the door first. My heart was at the climax of a drum solo. The latch was gone. Worse yet, the door was different. I couldn't explain it. What the fuck? Shiza. I didn't mean to speak out loud, and that had been enough to get the gorilla's attention back on me. It had to have been in my head, but I felt heat on me. I held still, imagining myself leaping out of the way right as it charged and sprinted for the door. My ears were perked like I knew what to listen for. I knew nothing about calculating distance from sound. I put my free hand in the detergent box and grabbed a big fistful of powder. The gorilla was quiet, but if it weren't behind me, I had no idea where. The lack of anything happening was a dangling knife over me, no matter where I moved. I spun and threw the detergent straight ahead. Bingo! It worked. Enough of the powder hit it that it was outlined from head to chest, and I believed it had been blinded. I dropped the detergent and ran for the door. The gorilla stayed put, spitting and shaking its head. It may have been choking, but I couldn't tell from the sound it was making. I paced myself, not wanting to collide with the front door. I tried to slide to a stop on the linoleum, but I'd lost the sock and went down on my knees. It hurt, but I knee-walked the 2 feet to the door and grabbed onto the handle for dear life. This time, I didn't waste the effort of trying to get the door open. This wasn't my front door. It wasn't a door at all. The seam where the door met the threshold looked drawn on. I was so shocked. I didn't know how to feel. I slowly turned toward the kitchen where the gorilla was. The washing powder, partially covering it, began to disappear. Its head turned as it began sniffing the air. Shiza. Part 2. It charged me. I had the presence of mind not to scream, certain I was about to be smashed into bits and pieces. The gorilla batted the couch out of its way, spitting it several feet and breaking my glass coffee table. I strafed to my left and felt the beast breeze past me, then the mighty thunk as it collided with a door that should have screeched as it tore from its hinges. I was stunned, looking at the door which didn't seem any worse for wear, and also still didn't look like an actual door. I didn't waste time examining the door. I was about to run to the basement, thinking I could get out through the egress window. The ape mewled on the floor, wounded, and I stopped, something that approximated sympathy holding me back. It hadn't chosen to be in this situation any more than I had, I guessed. By now, I should be seated across from a beautiful, onyx-skinned woman with lips that were slowly driving me insane from how much I wanted to kiss them. That had really been a wallop against the door. Even though I couldn't see the big fella, it had to have been hurt. Jesus. I hoped it wasn't dying. Without consciously deciding, I knelt and felt around until I found it. It was big, but surprisingly not as big as I was expecting. Don't get me wrong. Beneath all that fur, or is it hair? Do gorillas have hair or fur? Was corded muscle that could definitely rip me to pieces as easy as I could cardboard. But it wasn't the gigantic monster my imagination said it was. Its head had something tacky that I guessed was blood. Had to be careful around there. If the ape had a doodle on the noodle, I didn't want to agitate it. Doodle on the noodle? What the hell did that mean, and why did I think that? I prodded around on the face as gently as I could. The flat, wide nose was wet like a dog's. I guess that was good. The teeth were much thicker than a human's. My mind colored them, yellow with flecks of red, like the ape didn't usually taste blood, but had before. The faint teeth were particularly intimidating. No doubt they could rip out a man's throat had it wanted. Beneath the hairy chin, I don't know why I thought of its chin as hairy when it's covered with hair fur or fur hair, was a thick neck I doubted I could have put my hands around if I wanted to choke the ape. There was something else. A collar. The material felt like leather. Was this thing somebody's pet? I felt around the back for a clasp or something, getting lost in each new train of thought. I should have known better. A big fingery paw grasped my forearm. It was like the whole world went into a blender as the gorilla whipped me around like it was using me to beat somebody else. I'm sure I screamed. I'm sure I peed a little more. By the time the world reassembled into discernible shapes, I was face first into the love seat more than a dozen feet away. My body hurt, but not necessarily my arm. It was as if the pain had been put in a blender and been spread all over me like peanut butter. An agony spread. My other arm that the gorilla had hit and sent me sprawling before didn't hurt as intensely either. Things that hadn't been hurt now had a general throb, like the center of my back, the arches of my feet, my shoulders, elbows, wrists, and the major joints of my lower body. Even my internal organs felt uncomfortable, like they'd been smooshed together. Only one part of me had its own unique pain. My hand. Specifically my fingers. They throbbed like they'd been garroted, and the blood was only slowly returning to them. But I was holding something familiar. I realized as I mentally assessed my damage. I was holding the ape's collar. I tried reaching with my other hand to examine it, and apparently that was too much motion too soon. I threw up. It was a gagging, awful sound, particularly horrific because I hadn't eaten today. I rolled away from the mess I'd made and onto the floor, taking care not to do the collar. I lay on the floor and just breathed for a long time. The gorilla was somewhere nearby, but I had no capacity to do anything about it. It was chuffing and knocking around somewhere where I'd been. I needed to move before it found me, and gave me the bam-bam treatment again. My stomach was settling, and I could finally open my eyes without feeling like the earth was trying to spin me off of it. I moved slowly, taking as much care as I could not to make noise. It was close enough to close the distance in seconds. I got to my knees, my head feeling like it was actually going to stay attached to my body. The gorilla still seemed discombobulated, so now was the best time possible to move. I planted one foot on the carpet, and smashed the glass I'd thrown underfoot. I choked back a scream, and for a brief moment didn't know how to move. I couldn't lift my foot because of how I was balanced, and I definitely couldn't put weight on it to stand. The couch was closer than it should have been from the ape knocking it closer. I toppled over onto the cushions and straightened my leg too soon, driving the shards deeper into my foot. A whimper crawled out of me, and I cut it off. The gorilla did a scream thing and made another sound like it was shaking its head. I went still, like by being quiet. I would also turn invisible. Through ball fondling luck, I still had the collar in my grip. It was still invisible, and I took a moment to jam it into my pocket. It had something hanging from it, a circular piece of metal, like a name tag. The gorilla started sniffing the air again. It had done that before, and it connected that it was smelling me. A quick sniff of my pit verified my deodorant was still intact, but my cologne had combined with sweat and the resulting scent smelled kinda like bananas. I hate bananas. The gorilla continued snorting at the air. It couldn't have been more than a few feet away, and I wasn't in any position to run. Hans Gruber saying to Carl, "Scheiße, dem Fenster," came to mind as I listened to the gorilla sniff its way over to me. I stood, my weight on one foot, my heart doing a drum solo. The ape didn't seem to notice me. I was confused, because I was right in front of it. It had me. I was wounded prey. But I wasn't begging it to get me. It was breath-smellingly close. I ran for the stairs, ignoring the agonizing pain slicing even deeper into my foot. In hindsight, I'd wished I'd run for the basement stairs. But I was here, so I fell to my knees and crawled up. It was hopeless. The ape would be pounding me into oblivion in milliseconds. My arms and legs were filled with a boundless energy that carried me all the way upstairs. It was only after I'd stopped before I realized the gorilla hadn't gotten me. I was taking thirsty gulps of air, my wounded foot pulsing with the heartbeat. I glanced over my shoulder as if I could have seen what it was doing down there. There was a thump and a fist-sized hole above the handrail. "Oh, Scheiße!" I crawled into the spare bedroom and slapped the door shut with my wounded foot. Fresh agony bloomed up to my ankle, and I had to clench my eyes and grit my teeth to get through it without screaming. The gorilla was banging its way upstairs. It was growling and hooting. My house was a 3-bedroom with a Jack and Jill bathroom between the 2 unused bedrooms. I crawled in there and carefully shut the door. I put down the toilet lid and hauled myself onto it before folding my leg to examine my injured foot. 2 angry-looking shards of glass protruded from my sole, and I plucked out one and then the other one before I could start weighing how much damage I would be doing versus how much had already been done. Removing the broken glass was disturbingly unpainful. The ape was at the top of the stairs, sniffing around. If it truly hadn't seen me go in the bedroom, I had to figure it had enough deductive reasoning to work out where I'd gone. Apes were probably as smart as 8-year-olds, at least, and an 8-year-old could figure out how to turn a doorknob, I'm sure. I put the ball of my foot on the floor and shifted weight onto it. It hurt, but it wasn't agony. I was worried about it not hurting at all. I sat again and took the toilet paper off the spindle and rolled TP gently around my foot until it was patted to my satisfaction. I had to move fast before the ape was in here. It knocked on a wall, and I didn't know how to interpret that. There might have been another piece of glass in my foot, but I didn't have time to dig around in there. Hell, I'd forgotten to sterilize the cuts. The toilet paper was getting sticky on my sole. Hopefully, the wound was cleansing itself as it bled. Losing my foot to an infection would suck, but I'd rather that than an uninfected foot and a room-temp corpse. I spared a moment to look in the mirror. There was a look of constant surprise I couldn't get off my face. My shirt sleeve was plastered to my arm. At least I thought so at first. When I tried plucking it from my skin, I whimpered, because it was the ache from getting battered by the gorilla had sunk into my bicep, and it had swelled almost to twice its normal size. "Thunk!" I gasped. The beast was at the door. Then it began crunching, and I knew the gorilla was pretty much walking through the hollow, cardboard-like door and was in the bedroom. I limped into the other bedroom and shut that door. My niece stayed with me sometimes when my brother and his wife had date nights. I'd set up this room for her. There was a small pad and mechanical pencil on the end table, and the collar in my pocket came back to mind. I hobbled over and dropped onto the floor when the gorilla punched something in there that shattered. It sounded annoyed as it yelled, like it was demanding me to come out and show myself. I fished the collar out of my pocket, handing it carefully so I didn't drop it and had to feel around to find it. The circular metal pendant attached to the collar felt like it had an inscription on it. My thumb wasn't sensitive enough that I could discern the letters, though. I slipped it under a sheet of paper on a notepad and picked up the mechanical pencil. Clicked it a few times until the tiny bit of graphite poked out. I began scratching at the pendant through the paper, hoping I could get a phone number or a person's name. It became obvious in seconds that this wasn't going to work. The mechanical pencil was too direct and I couldn't make anything out. This would have been much easier with a number 2 pencil. The gorilla sounded like it had wandered back into the other bedroom where my computer and printer were. It busied itself smashing a couple $1,000s worth of electronics I was still paying off. I thought a moment, then opened the end table drawer and fished around until I found the refills for the mechanical pencil. I slid open the little container and shook a few of them into my palm. They were so small and delicate, and my hands were so uncoordinated that I broke the first 2 trying to pick them up. Then I realized more would probably be better, and dumped the rest on top of the notepad, cupping my other hand to keep them from rolling off. I budged them all and began rubbing them on the paper where the pendant was. In a moment, I saw the results. It wasn't what I'd been hoping for, but it was something. Just a name. Sheila, I said aloud. Was that the owner's name? No, that couldn't have been it. My brain was so unconnectingly obvious. Sheila was the gorilla's name. Her name. I turned over and sat. I just assumed it was a male gorilla trying to kill me. How did being a female benefit me? I honestly didn't know much about the species. I think females were smaller. Maybe that meant they weren't as strong. But a lack of strength didn't seem to be an issue. A blow that had thrown me several feet and being wielded like a human whip disabused me of any thought that a lack of strength on her part would be any kind of benefit I could take advantage of. Then the other bedroom door exploded. Sheila stomped her way in. I was caught completely by surprise, thinking I'd have the bed between us if she came in from the bathroom and I could scramble out the other door. But my brain couldn't reverse gears and get me to go to the bedroom. Instead, I crawled under the bed on autopilot, like that would keep me safe. Sheila made a sound like she were trying to communicate something. But damned if I knew ape. I laid flat, looking left and right, trying to figure out from which side she'd attack. Of course, that wouldn't matter if she tossed the bed off of me. She had to have seen me. I pulled as far back to the wall as I could while still laying flat. Sheila sniffed. Her muzzle was feet away. I heard patting on the floor and realized she was feeling under the bed. I trembled with fear. She was so close, wondering why she was dragging this out. I didn't know why she was still sniffing, like she didn't know exactly where I was. Lacey, my niece, had a pair of poop emoji house slippers under the bed. I grabbed one and flicked it into the bathroom. Sheila grunted and leapt onto the bed, her bulk making the mattress poke me in the back. I coughed in surprise and hoped the squeaking bed had covered up my noise. Sheila made a noise like she was surprised. She bounced on the bed a couple times and slammed her fist several times on the mattress like she was trying to understand the soft thing she was on top of. I wormed from directly beneath her, doing my best to bunch myself up near the foot of the bed. I was listening for a sign, intending to spring out and run for the stairs. Hopefully, I could make it to the basement and try the egress window. But as I inched my way forward, Sheila became less and less aggravated sounding. I dared to poke my fingers out and listened. She took a deep breath and it sounded like she was shaking out the covers. I stuck out an arm, then the other, then pulled my upper body out. I was all the way out, and Sheila had all but gone quiet. I got on my knees and hunched behind the footboard. When I was bold enough to peek, I saw the covers covering the relatively small frame of the female ape. She was on her side and appeared to be sleeping. I could have sneaked out and hidden again, but that would just be more of the same. If I were going to get out of here, I was going to have to do something different. I crawled around the bed and inched closer. Part 3. Those butterflies were moshing in my stomach again. Common sense begged me not to do this, but I might not get another chance to possibly learn something from Sheila that might get us out of here. Yeah, us. I know. I figured we both were victims in whatever the hell this was. She wasn't after me, necessarily, but I was the only other living being in the house. At least, I thought so. Maybe she was scared for the same reason I was, being trapped in a place she didn't know with a stranger. I stifled a laugh. I was sympathizing with an invisible gorilla. My reverie over, I began gently patting Sheila down for I didn't know what. I found it moments later. She had a scrunchy thing around her wrist and what felt like a key. I slipped my index beneath the band. Oh shit, she yanked her hand away. I almost screamed. I almost ran. But she didn't seem as though she'd awakened. I peeled myself off the wall and approached. It took another moment to find her hand again. I was lucky she wasn't laying on it. It came off and onto my wrist easily. But that introduced a new problem. Where the hell did it go? I backed out toward the door, intent on using this key on every door I could find. It might have been to a storage locker, but I wouldn't not find out for lack of trying. I'd crept midway down the stairs when I heard a door creak open. It wasn't my front door, because that was practically at the bottom of the stairs. It wasn't my patio door, and I didn't think it had been the door to the garage either, because I put WD-40 on the hinges just the other day. While I'd had the stuff out, I oiled all the door's hinges. Wherever it was far enough away not to be any first floor door, but still in the house. Like the basement. I don't have a door in my basement. And then I was weightless as something dragged me back up the stairs and into the bedroom again. It was Sheila, and I knew I was dead. Except, moments later, I wasn't. She stayed silent, and I realized I'd been played. I'd been running from her. Successfully, I might add, until she'd laid what had obviously been a trap. She'd crawled in bed and waited for me to come to her. Maybe gorillas were a little smarter than 8-year-olds. Or maybe I was a lot dumber. I had no idea, but I could ask St. Peter in the next few minutes. She pulled me onto the bed with her and straddled my chest. It wasn't what you might be thinking. She was just pinning me down. I was no more than 185 pounds, but she felt like a half-ton. Easy. But that could have been the air suddenly being pushed out of my lungs. Except, I could breathe. I just couldn't move. She was excited, chittering and hooting, except not loud like she was trying to be all victorious. It was just like she was excited. Or maybe a little scared? She began pawing at my head with one of those gorilla hands, which didn't feel all that big. It was clumsy, almost like I was invisible to her. And that's when it hit me. She was blind. It made sense. I'd surprised her, and she'd sent me flying when I left my bedroom. She'd hit the couch when she'd charged at me. She'd been sniffing the air to figure out where I was because she couldn't see me. And now she was covering my mouth. A moment of panic swelled in me like it was about to burst out of my chest. I thought she was about to suffocate me. Had that been her intention, there wouldn't have been a damn thing I could have done about it. I would have died, and she would have made sure I did it quietly. But then I realized when she went silent too, that she wanted me to listen. Something was banging against the wall somewhere below us, and it was big. My basement was unfinished, so I could only imagine what it was breaking. I heard wood split, a long pause, then groaning stairs as the thing down there began coming up. Sheila made a quiet hooting noise, and I could sense her nervousness. It made me even more nervous. And then I realized something more. She knew what the thing coming upstairs was. Or maybe was familiar with it somehow. I kept my basement door closed because basements are creepy, so when the stairs stopped complaining from the weight they were under, I figured it had to be at the door. I expected it would shatter through it, but the gentle click of the latch bolt told me it had opened the door. We listened as it stomped around in the kitchen. I think it was just walking, and the footfall sounded intimidating because it was just heavy. A chair scraped on the linoleum, and a moment later, wood splintered. I guess the sound had been a surprise and it broke the chair. I tapped her hand, communicating to her that I understood to be quiet. She removed her hand and rolled off me. For a moment, I wasn't sure where she'd gone. But then I realized she was right next to me from the heat of her body. I rolled onto my side and was surprised I could see through the blankets and mattress to the bedroom floor. Whatever made her invisible must also have been transferable to anything she was in contact with long enough. I did my best to scooch around her and place my feet lightly on the carpet. The thing downstairs seemed to still be getting the lay of the land, but we couldn't count on that for long. My best guess was that a male gorilla was downstairs, and one thing I was sure of was he was going to be a lot bigger and stronger than her. By now, I had her scent all over me, and if he got a whiff of her on me, I had a feeling that wasn't going to fare well. But she was afraid. I couldn't begin to speculate on gorilla relationships, except to say that they got along well enough to propagate the species. But perhaps these weren't gorillas at all. Sure, she sounded and smelled like a gorilla, but I hadn't seen her. Invisibility could have been a natural state for her. She could have been from the moon, for all I knew. Okay, I said, feeling around until I found her hand. She squeezed the knuckles at the base of my fingers, reminding me to be quiet or maybe reminding me to be scared. I reached over and patted the back of her hand with my free one and she eased up. I led her into the Jack and Jill bathroom and quietly closed the door. The pain in my foot had dulled even though I could feel the bit of glass still in there. My arm beneath the shoulder was all bruised when I looked at it in the mirror. But my face scared me most. My nose was gone. I couldn't stifle the whimper, and Sheila made a sort of chastising snort. I prodded my face in general before touching where my nose should have been. It still had the same narrow tip and knot at the upper part of the bridge. I could feel it, I just couldn't see it. I looked at my hand holding hers, and could see it was starting to dissolve too. So, it had to be prolonged contact. I resisted the urge to shake her hand off mine. If anything, I held onto her tightly. She was scared, like she knew the bad downstairs. and I wasn't about to take that for granted. My plan was simple. Wait for it to come upstairs. We'd hear it go in one bedroom, and we'd simply go out the other way. It sounded like it wasn't entirely coordinated, and I was betting my life on it being invisible and blind too. It finally found the stairs. I heard it wrench the banister off the wall as it plodded its way to the second floor. I stroked Sheila's hand, hopefully reassuring her. It had to have reached the top of the stairs, but I realized I couldn't hear it. It made none of the ape sounds Sheila had when she'd been chasing me throughout the house. A chill ran through me at the possibility that was intentional. He began sniffing as he stomped around the hall, trying to zero in on us. I thought he was approaching the bedroom on my left, then on the right. Then he was silent for a long time. He was stalking us. I didn't know how acute a male gorilla's sense of smell was, but I had to guess he could smell us. Sheila had been able to track me. I couldn't help but feel that he knew exactly where we were. That his waiting was just an attempt to wear out our nerves so we would break first and run right to him. Then he began sniffing so loud, I thought he was in the bedroom to my right. I reached for the other doorknob and paused just before grabbing it. He was over there. I had a moment of panic, thinking there were two of them. But if that were the case, we were dead. I couldn't get the bathroom window open fast enough, if it would open at all. And that would no doubt have been a waste of time, as the sound would have revealed exactly where we were. I had to acknowledge there was a real possibility we were going to be face to face with whatever was out there. I certainly wasn't going to be able to fight it off, and as scared as Sheila was, she wouldn't either. The bottom of my foot was soppy with blood. I took a step toward the medicine cabinet and felt the last piece of glass scrape on the tile as I dragged my foot. I took out the bottle of isopropyl alcohol and was in the process of closing the cabinet when the wall exploded. Instead of going around through either bedroom, the beast began punching through the wall separating us. The mirror fell off the wall and shattered, a hole about the size of a dinner plate where it had been. It quickly grew to the size of a manhole cover as the monster tore away drywall and sections of frame as it dug its way toward us. Sheila screamed and we backed up until we bumped into the bathtub. The sudden attack was overwhelming to the senses and I couldn't think. As it continued ripping a hole in the wall, I took out my knife and dabbed a couple holes in the lid of the bottle of alcohol. I assumed his face was somewhere near the hole, and I stepped closer and squirted the alcohol into the hole. The thing immediately stopped. And yet again, it didn't growl, bang on its chest, or anything else I thought gorillas did. I could hear it swiping at his face, and I grabbed for Sheila's hand, hoping we could get around him while he was distracted. It was strange. I suppose that was another gorilla trying to get to us, but it hadn't made any ape noises like Sheila had been. I didn't know how any of this was supposed to work. As we moved through the bedroom to the other door, we could be walking right into the beast's arms. But I had to try something. This couldn't go on forever, and if we were going to get out of this place, I'd stop thinking of this as my house shortly after trying to open the door that wasn't a door. We would have to be proactive. I peeked around the bedroom door as if I could see the gorilla. The wall on the other side of the bathroom was completely destroyed, broken wooden beams and wiring exposed. Something was definitely there, moving around, but it was invisible, just like Sheila. I turned to Sheila and got on one knee. "Come on, girl. We're going to make a run for it." I yanked the door open and charged into the hall. Sheila pulled her hand away and I stumbled as I tried to commit two opposite actions at the same time. I turned to reach for Sheila and tried to keep going at the same time. The result was me coming to a complete stop, half-turned, facing the bathroom hole, and thus the other invisible ape. "Sheila?" I said. Then something big knocked into me, bonging me upside down off the walls like a pinball before I hit the stairs and tumbled the rest of the way down. I didn't lose consciousness, but I don't recall the entire journey to the bottom. It was like my brain had stopped recording for a second or two. Falling down the stairs and having the wind knocked out of me had only happened 3 times in my life, and 2 of those had been today. At least the wind hadn't been knocked out of me this time, but my spine hurt. I'd probably hit it on a couple of stairs. It wasn't often when I'd felt a core pain like that, and it had usually been followed shortly by a hospital visit. But I wasn't out yet, and I still could move. "Oh, Sheila," I said, rolling onto my stomach and crawling toward the basement door. It was open, but I was going to have to get around the mess that had been left in the kitchen. My dining table was destroyed, and the slab had been knocked off the island and was propped against the cabinets below the sink. It looked like a bowling ball had shattered the oven glass and the refrigerator had been wedged into the doorway of the mudroom. I was able to get to my feet and step carefully around smashed wooden floor slats. I pulled the utensil drawer open and the whole thing came apart as it slid out, scattering silverware all over the floor. Not a bad idea. It wouldn't be anything more than an annoyance, but an annoyed extra few seconds maybe delayed the satisfaction of pulling me apart. I gathered up the silverware and stood, ready to pitch it all on the other side of the island. I froze. I didn't know how I knew, but the other gorilla was already down here with me. Part 4. Several long seconds passed. I heard what sounded like a palm sliding across the wall, and I threw everything in that general direction and turned for the knife block. I slid one out and turned around. There was no way to tell if it had moved, or at least it hadn't crossed the silverware strewn about on the other side of the island. The couch jumped. I covered my mouth to hide a gasp. A chair slid across the floor and banged into the wall. I slid a foot backward on the floor. A piece of glass a few feet away crunched. I stayed silent, realizing the gorilla was zeroing in on where I was. It had to have had an idea of where I was. I steeled myself, determined not to make another sound. Then it threw blood in my face. Some of it got in my mouth. "Ah, Scheiße!" I said, and began spitting and wiping away at my cheek. It charged from somewhere in front of me, and I tucked and rolled, hoping I was going underneath it. The upper cabinets to the right of the sink disintegrated, glasses and dishes inside shattering. I was on the opposite end of the island, the open door to the basement open wide and welcoming. A piece of a dinner plate smashed on the floor behind me. I didn't wait. I ran for the basement. An ape fist-sized dent appeared in the wall inches from my head. I leapt/ran down the stairs, holding onto the handrail all the way down. I scuttled away from the stairs to the middle of the basement. It didn't take long to spot the giant-ass door in the middle of the wall that didn't belong there. Obviously, that was how the big gorilla had gotten in. My mind went to Sheila, though. I'd lost track of her upstairs. I wanted to use this key, but I wanted to bring her with me. But this other ape was really good at finding me. Shit, it may have been as smart as a teenager. Maybe I could use the key to get out and I could come back with authorities or something? That felt like a cop-out. Like, if I did get out of here, things wouldn't be the same when I returned? Like, this was all some sort of cosmic layer that could be peeled back at the whim of some non-benevolent thing that had set this all up as a means of entertainment. I'd have to try. I hadn't stood a chance with Sheila, and she hadn't really been fighting me. This other ape seemed to be more cunning, was a lot stronger, and was somewhere between wherever Sheila was and me. I felt for the invisible key tied to my wrist. I slid it in the keyhole after a minor amount of fumbling. My stomach felt sour. I just couldn't turn it. I couldn't open it. I couldn't leave her. She was just a gorilla, but I got a strong sense of who she was. She'd saved me. I sighed, and then the other ape swatted me across the room. I came to as I slid into a wall. The gorilla breathed heavily like it was disappointed in me. Then the lights went out. I realized the gorilla had thrown the switches on the electrical panel. Damn it! This thing might have been smarter than me! I rolled onto my back and did my best at taking a breath of air without screaming. It felt like everything on one side was broken. I tried to move that arm, and it glitched like all the muscles were receiving confusing signals. Everything from my ear to my hip burned. I closed my eyes as I rode the crushing wave of agony, trying and failing to keep from whimpering. When the bulge of pain finally began to subside, I opened my eyes. A pair of glowing red eyes were floating high above me. They were on me. I sat up slowly, feeling a heavy weight hanging off the side of me. I realized it was my broken arm, and that definitely was the other gorilla staring down at me. And he was definitely staring at me. He gave me a poke in the chest with what I guessed was one of those toe fingers. Then those coal-fired eyes turned toward that door. I craned my head as best I could to see the now glowing key I'd left in the lock. I fished the knife out of my pocket with my good hand. I had no clue how it was going to benefit me, especially in my non-dominant hand, but I held out hope. It seemed to want me to do something with the door, and then it clicked into place. It wanted me to open the door. Duh. But why me? I'd heard it come in through this door. It could open the door itself. If it wanted out, why not just go out? I definitely was not as smart as this gorilla. It nudged me again, and I slowly got up, tears streaming from my eyes from a little bit of jostling of my broken arm as I stood. I kept my teeth gritted as my fingers throbbed, holding the knife against my leg with my palm. Something behind the gorilla was moving. Twin orange orbs floated to the door, and the glowing key flipped upside down in the lock. It was a gentle click, but I could hear it. I was sure this animal could too. I let the weapon clatter to the floor, attracting the ape's attention instead of looking behind it. It looked to where the knife had fallen. My heart was on the verge of leaping out of my body. I could run, but if it could see me in the dark, I wasn't getting anywhere. Sheila had vanished. She had to be near, but I couldn't spot her. I hoped he couldn't either. I shuffled to the door. I didn't know what was about to happen, but there was a process going on here. I had to trust it. I laid my hand on the ornate handle and pulled. The door creaked, and I stepped back to let it swing open. The gorilla shoved me aside and made a sound like it was happy. It took a step, the threshold glowing green. The eyes canted to the side like it was thinking. Then Sheila screeched as she made a beeline at him. She launched herself at him just as he turned. Their bodies collided and those coal eyes disappeared into whatever was on the other side of that threshold. The ape roared as the door began to close. I realized Sheila was closing it, and I leaned it as best I could. We got it closed, and then... silence. The door was shut, but it wasn't like I'd locked it. The lack of anything on the other side of the door was just odd. I kept my shoulder pressed onto the door, waiting for the ape to bash the door down on top of me. Sheila grunted in front of me. I looked into her orange eyes, and it took me a moment to realize she wasn't holding up the door with me anymore. I relaxed. I didn't feel safe, but she definitely knew more than me. I took a step toward her, and she shuffled her feet. Her eyes danced all around the room. I didn't know how to read her behavior, and I realized I had to give myself somewhat of a break. This was my first invisible gorilla. She grabbed my hand, and I thought we were having a moment until she put it on the key. "Ooh," she said, and I thought I understood. I had to turn the key. And I suppose that whomever was turning the key determined what was on the other side. I mean, it was a magic door. When I stopped trying to make sense, it made sense. I opened the door. For a moment, I expected a giant gorilla on the other side to pulpify me. But it was a view of my street from my porch. Again, it didn't make sense, but I understood it when I stopped trying to understand. Sheila grabbed the wrist of my broken arm. I winced, and she immediately let go. I turned back, and for just a moment in the daylight, I thought I saw a silhouette of her. But I blinked and it was gone. I couldn't see her eyes either, but we were close enough that I could tell she was there. She took my other hand and pulled me in. We hugged as best as I was able. I didn't want to let her go, because this was feeling like goodbye. We finally broke and I grabbed for her hand. She must have anticipated me because my hand slipped through hers, my palm sliding over hers. "No, you're coming with me," I said. She made a sound kind of similar to a cough, but it came off as dismissive. Like, not only had she understood what I'd said, but she was telling me no. This I didn't understand. When I turned the key, the door opened to my world. When she'd turned the key, the other gorilla had gone somewhere else, probably where they're from. She'd been terrified of him. Why would she want to go back there? I wasn't going to let her just go back to that. I'd drag her, broken arm or no. I'd bodily pick her up and carry her over the threshold. There was no way. She placed the flat of her palm to my chest and shoved me. I tripped over my heels and rolled onto my back with enough force that my legs kicked into the air. They landed on the door. The closed front door. I got up as quickly as I could, forgetting and then immediately remembering my broken arm. It hurt so much. My breath caught in my throat like an involuntary scream was trying to climb out of me. I stood there, letting it pass until I was able to open the door of my living room. For a moment, I was terrified to step inside. I swallowed and put one foot in. Hello? I stepped inside, seeing with my own eyes that nothing had happened inside my house. The couch was where it was supposed to be, and the banister hadn't been destroyed. I dared to walk farther in and saw no broken glass, no kitchen island slab. I had a feeling when I went upstairs there'd be no destroyed wall, and in the basement, no magical door. I was as sad as I was relieved. I'd miss Sheila. I took a deep breath, wanting to exhale the events of the last hour or two before I drove myself to the hospital. The fetid air washing into my face caught me by surprise and I gagged. The smell was not exactly right in a way I couldn't qualify. Synthetic, almost, but unmistakable. "Scheiße, it stinks like monkey in here," I said. And that was There's an Invisible Gorilla in My House with the Only Key, and I Just Put On Banana Cologne by B Historical 2758. I wanted to cap off this month with a long story that was a little silly, but still in a horrifying kind of way. And I thought this was the perfect one to do it. It's a fun story. I'm not going to waste too much time with the review. I know that some people say the reviews are a little long now. Oh, so sorry. But this was good. This was a great, fun, bizarre, strange story. And I know I would be horrified if I put on some cologne that suddenly made me smell like bananas and there was an invisible gorilla in my house. I would probably die. I would hope I wouldn't. I'd hope I'd be smart enough to figure something out. But if I'm honest with you, I feel like my chances in a situation like this where it ends up being two are pretty slim. Because I don't have multiple floors. So, yeah. Not great situation. But a fantastic little fun story. I really hope you've enjoyed it for I mean, it's not quite Halloween, but it's close enough. But for the spooky month, for October, we're entering fall/autumn now. Things are getting nice and cool and relaxing. It's a great season. It's always one of my favorite seasons, if you ask me, because it's just nice. It's just nice, you know. It feels good. Nothing's too hot anymore. Chef's kiss is delicious. It's great. I have been Nate at Night. I've had a fantastic time, and I sure hope you have too. I really hope I get to see some of you for the Halloween Hangout on the 31st, where me and my brother will be playing through Slender the Arrival, reading some scary stories live, things of that, maybe other things as well live, I'm not entirely sure. It's kind of up in the air. If you have any that you'd like to submit, that you would like us to read live, please send it to natedognarrates@gmail.com, because there's a good chance we'll read them. I really hope you enjoy the rest of your October. These stories might slow down for a little while as I kind of pivot into the next stage of my my life, I suppose, career, what have you. Because as fun as it has been doing a lot of the YouTube stuff, I feel like what I've been doing at the moment isn't quite hitting the mark all the time, and I'm gonna try some things. So we'll kind of see. I'm sure the stories will inevitably still make some kind of a return. I feel like it's just a nice staple that we've been able to do. And obviously, you know, whenever there's any Twitter ones or cool ones that can be exemplified, that's also good as well. But also including being able to work more on my project, the Infinity Bureau. I'd really like to continue getting that off the ground. So, yeah. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care out there. Shout out to these cool peeps. Seriously, we wouldn't have got this far without them. You're all amazing. I love you all so much. Honestly, it's tremendous work you do. Supporting the channel, keeping us afloat. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. You too could become a cool peep for just $1 a month. What that's going to get you is 2 weeks early access to future videos. It's also going to get you exclusive members-only content. And there might be extra goodies coming along the way. What can I say? I'm just charitable like that. Or you can become super cool. Now that's $5 a month, but what you're going to get out of that is all the perks from the previous tier, plus also 10% discount on future merchandise, and also access to my private Discord server with a fantastic little community that we have, where I plan on hosting monthly movie nights and also weekly casual hangouts. You can also show your support by tipping through either Super Chats, Super Thanks, both on YouTube, or through my Streamlabs.com URL, which will be in the description of future videos below. Cheers for now, guys.